Charlemagne, Obama was out there last week waving his finger against black men when Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton were going to wave their finger at white women. They're definitely, by the way, trying to win them over. What is this? Okay, Charlemagne the God? Dude, I've seen some of this and it has not been good. This interview with Charlemagne the God and Kamala Harris.
But I do want to say, President Obama was out there last week waving his finger at black men. When are Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton going to wave their finger at white women? When are Bill Clinton and Joe Biden going to wave their finger at white men? Because 52% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. 55% voted for Trump in 2020. They all voted against their own interests. When the finger waving going to start at them?
Well, thank you for highlighting that. I do have the support of over 200 Republicans who worked for various administrations, including everyone going back to Ronald Reagan, to the Bushes, to John McCain and Mitt Romney, and including Liz Cheney, and I'm very proud to have her support. And I believe that many of them who may have voted for Trump before are supporting me because they know the stakes are so high in terms of our very democracy and rule of law. And
so the finger wagging should start today or tomorrow.
Well, I think what is happening is that we are all working on reminding people of what is at stake, and that is very important.
But I do want to.
Why can't she just say yes? Holy shit! What a Yo, I saw something online where she said that it's like she's an Indian woman and she hates like African American men. Yo, they might be right, because if you legitimately sit back and listen to what was said, Charlemagne asked, "Yo, why is Barack Obama waving his finger at black men? When is Liz Cheney and Hillary going to start waving their finger at white women, and Joe Biden waving his finger at white men?" I'm not even a fan of Charlemagne, but I'm agreeing with him on this, right? Like, if you're going to do it on one side, you got to do it on the other. And she goes out and says, no, we got the support of 200 of them. We're good. We got 200 white women and men, whatever they want to be. We got 200 of them, and I'm very proud of that. And then he says, okay, well, it should start tomorrow. And she says, I think we need to remind people of what's important. Can you not just give the easy layup on this? I mean, that's a damning not answer. I hate that fucking soundbite. But is she really unable to? I mean, I know she's incompetent, and I don't ever want to say that she's stupid, because I think that's a little derogatory. But she may be an idiot. Breaking: Harris says she's considering taxpayer-funded reparations for blacks by saying, look up, I grew in the middle class.
My question to you is, what's your stance on reparations? We all know that America became great, off the backs of free black labor. How progressive are you?
I hate that whole sentence. I hate that whole notion. Ugh, that makes me sick.
You on making it a priority and righting America's wrongs? It's understood that you are running for president for all people of America. Asking for specifics for black communities doesn't mean don't do for others, but black Americans are heavily asked to vote Democrat in every election for over half a century, with very little in return. What are your plans to address these very important issues and change that narrative?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Zeke.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for your work. So, to your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda...
And the context of which they exist, which is history, which is not the present, right? So in the past, history is not even like last generation, your grandma or great-grandpa. This is like 5 generation grandpa. What are we talking about?
First of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother, worked hard, raised me and my sister, and by the time I was in high school, she was able to afford our first.
I don't even know what to say. I don't even know. Charlemagne asked if she deserves some blame for the border crisis. She says she dropped the bill to fix immigration. Wait. No.
But doesn't the Biden administration have to take some blame for the border, though? A lot of the blame? Because, I mean, the first 3 years, y'all did get a lot of things wrong with the border.
No, Charlemagne, within hours of being inaugurated, the first bill we passed before we did the Inflation Reduction Act, before we did the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, before we did the Safer Communities Act to deal with gun violence, first thing we dropped was a bill to fix the broken immigration system.
But doesn't the Biden administration have to take some blame for the border, though? A lot of the blame? Because, I mean, the first 3 years, y'all did get a lot of things wrong with the border.
No, Charlemagne, within hours of being inaugurated, the first bill we passed before we did the Inflation Reduction Act, before we did the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, before we did the Safer Communities Act to deal with gun violence, first thing we dropped was a bill to fix the broken immigration system.
I think I might start crying. How do we have somebody running to be a president who is such an utter joke, who is such an utter liar, who gaslights, who's so controlled? I think if you took an x-ray, you wouldn't find a bone in her body. There's no spine. It's all strings. It's all lies. Like, I feel like if you took a middle of the ground American and you had them truly in her back pocket to help build a campaign, it would be light years better than what better than what we're seeing now, because this is so, the fact that they're even saying this is close. Please, if you're somebody who's just a never Trumper, go listen to a podcast. Any one of them. There's podcasts where he's sitting down for hours on end. You would think he would say some stupid shit on hours on end on podcasts. Listen to him. Listen to him have complex conversations. Tough conversations about things that you may not agree with them on, like abortion. Listen to him and how based it sounds. Not the clickbait that you see or the segments that you see on CNN. Because what you see on CNN is not the same person, not the same thing, not even the same entity, not even the same ballpark to what you get now. And it's so disingenuous. It's so inauthentic. It's so gross. It's so manipulative that it hurts my heart that people get captured and they think that this should be even a close election. This should be the closest thing to a 100% Trump election that I've ever seen. None of these answers are good. None of them are even answered. They're not even adequate enough to be answered. If you try to answer or hold yourself in the same demeanor in your day-to-day life as she does, you would be fired. Same thing about Tim Walz. And we want them on the world stage, the international stage, representing everybody. They're a joke. And they're not even funny. I don't want to be like... Holy... Never forget that one of Joe Biden's first acts when he took office was to halt the construction of the border wall. January 2020, 2021, January 20th, 2021, proclamation of the termination of the emergency with respect to the southern border of the United States and the redirection of funds diverted to the border crisis to immigrate all your fucking murderers in here because we don't give a about Americans. Is this new? Obama was there last week. Okay, no, this is the same thing. We're ending it on this, and we're transitioning to something else.
Why do you allow them to call you the border czar when that's not even that
You
wasn't
know,
your
I'm
role?
not giving him permission for that.
Oh, you're right. But but I mean, you don't push back on it because that wasn't your role. What?
Fact checkers have made that clear.
Why do you allow them to call you the border czar when that's not even that wasn't
know,
your?
I can't end on that. We gotta fact check this. Let's scroll down the comments. Clearly, Charlemagne town hall is a joke. We're supposed to believe that just because she may or not have literally been called the border czar, that wasn't her job, despite the fact that she have had every one of the responsibilities that a border czar would have had. That's just because she was lying. Was Kamala Harris ever in charge of the border? Kamala Harris shows a long-term approach when it's tasked to tackle the rise in the border. August 14th. President Joe Biden watching 10,000 migrants from Central America reach the U.S. border just a few months into his administration taped his second in command to help address the influx, a decision that exposed the Vice President Kamala Harris to one of her biggest political liabilities. In grappling with migration, Harris proceeded cautiously. She focused on her time and prestiging boost private investment in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. The so-called Northern Triangle, her goal was to help create jobs to bolster economies and dissuade migrants from making their perilous journey to the United States. This decidedly long-term and limited approach to humanitarian crisis and has allowed Republicans to tie her to the border over the border fight over the border. While migration from the Northern Triangle embedded it surged from other nations, sparking an emergency at the U.S. border, or the U.S.-Mexican border, one that Republicans have aggressively sought to exploit at Harris's expense. A review of Harris's work on migration reveals a record that is more nuanced than the one presented by all her critics and allies. It also provides insights on how Harris, who took over as the Democratic standard bearer when Biden dropped out of the presidential race last month, might tackle one of the nation's most vexing concerns. Harris was never the border czar or put in charge of the border security or halting illegal border crossings, as Donald Trump and the Republicans have claimed. Instead, she was tasked in March 2021 with tackling the root causes of migration from the Northern Triangle. Are we about to be gaslit on this? Hold on. She wasn't the border czar, but she was tasked in March of 2021 with tackling the root causes of migration from the Northern Triangle and pushing its leaders along with Mexico to enforce immigration laws. So she was in charge of the border. Harris backers say that she demonstrated leadership by leveraging her status to win investments that might curb migration years down the road. Critics contend that she could have done more, but chose a less risky path to ensuring the problem would only worsen. Harris has defended her work in the campaign by running a ad on Friday that Harris, as a president, would hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Democrats have also blasted Trump for helping tank the bipartisan immigration bill earlier this year that would have increased funding for the border security. You can increase funding all you want, but if it's not being, used wisely and people can't do their jobs, then it really doesn't help. Excuse me. At the end of the day, even if she wasn't the quote-unquote border czar, she was still tasked, and that whole administration was tasked with handling the migration issue that was becoming a very bad issue, right? And the numbers, this is me speaking out of tongue, it got to a point where it was 4 times the amount of migration of fentanyl coming through the country, right? Kamala Harris is going to say, hey, within the past 90 X amount of days, I don't know, from recording this video, from when you're seeing it, but in the tail half of the administration, we've done efforts to cut it in half. Cool. Still 2 times the amount of migration, still 2 times the amount of fentanyl that's coming into this country. And it's